Okay, moving on to the last and final region that we will be breaking down here on today's show. This is the Midwest region, and I think of all of the regions that we've seen so far, this one has been the craziest and most hectic by far. And it's crazy because there have been so many teams that have been taken out in this region that not a lot of people expected, and it's crazy. So let's go over all of the games. We will start off in the first round. Illinois, they handled Drexel, and we know that going into this tournament, a lot of people were saying that besides Gonzaga, Illinois was playing the best basketball in the country going into this tournament, and I understand it's Drexel, who wasn't really a very good team, but Illinois looked good in this game, and I don't think after watching this game you would have any reasons or any concerns about the Fighting Illini. We know what happened in the second round game. We'll get to that in a little bit. The 8-9 game, and this was important. Loyola Chicago, they beat Georgia Tech by a final score of 71-60, and I'll say this. It's super, super, super unfortunate that Moses Wright was not able to play for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets because he won the ACC Player of the Year for a reason. He was one of the most improved players in not only the ACC, but I think in all of college basketball. And I think watching this game, Loyola was able to take advantage of their size. Krutwig was able to go to work, and it was hard for Georgia Tech because they had a guy in Jordan Usher who's around 6'7", 6'8", trying to guard Krutwig, and unfortunately, he was not able to stop or contain him. Alvarado played well for Georgia Tech. DeVoe was okay. And look, I think Josh Pastner deserves credit for getting this Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket team to the NCAA tournament, considering the fact that not a lot of people expected them to be here. And when you also consider the fact that last year they were banned from the postseason, that must have been so tough for them. But they won the ACC tournament, so I'm happy for them. I'm happy they had their moment. But Loyola Chicago was too much. They win it 71-60. How about the Tennessee Volunteers, man? One of the more disappointing teams in not only the SEC, but all of college basketball. And it's funny because when you ask Zach, who is the biggest disappointment this season in college basketball, the answers that are going to come to everybody's mind are Duke and Kentucky. There is no reason why those teams should have missed the NCAA tournament. There was no reason why both of those teams should have been this bad. But at the same time, what I'll also say is this. I think that you could make a realistic argument that the Tennessee Volunteers actually deserved to be in that same conversation as well, because I was really looking forward to seeing what this Tennessee Volunteer team was going to be able to do this season. I know Rick Barnes had his struggles in the NCAA tournament, but at the same time, this was a team that had a lot of the ingredients that I thought very good and teams of past years have had. A very good combination of experience and talent. And I think that when you look at Tennessee, they had too many good players. And sometimes that could just be a really bad thing. No one was really ever able to get into rhythm, and you could tell very early on in this game that it was not going to be their night. It was going to be the Oregon State Beavers' night. And Oregon State, they played some winning basketball in the Pac-12 tournament. Not only did they win that tournament, but keep in mind, this whole run easily could have never happened if they lose their first-round Pac-12 tournament game to UCLA like most people expected them to. And also keep in mind, that game, Oregon State was down late, and somehow, some way, they found a way to win. And they dominated Tennessee, winning this one 70-56, not even close. Oregon State really was able to control the game throughout. And it's Tennessee. Look, Rick Barnes has had his struggles in the NCAA tournament before. And it's unfortunate for Tennessee also because odds are you're going to be losing the two kids in Springer and in Johnson. I have a feeling that both of those two guys are probably going to be bouncing to the NBA, rightfully so, two very talented players. But at the same time, we'll see who comes back. We know that every player in college basketball is going to have the free year this year, so they'll have the ability to come back next year. And at the same time, could you imagine what the Tennessee Vols are going to look like next year with that kid, Kennedy Chandler, at point guard? It's going to be a big year for Rick Barnes next year for sure, but congratulations to Coach Tinkle and the Beavers. Oklahoma State beat Liberty 69-60, and it's funny because Oklahoma State played really well in this game, and not only did they play well, but really the whole team played well besides Cade Cunningham. And for me, what makes this Oklahoma State season so impressive is that Cade Cunningham's been very good. I think we could agree he's lived up to most of the expectations. But at the same time, most people before the season started at best had Oklahoma State as like a 10-9 seed because they weren't sure about the surrounding help that Cade Cunningham had. And they were worried that there was a chance he wouldn't have enough help. But luckily for Oklahoma State, guys like Matthew Alexander Moncrief and Rondell Walker and Bryce Williams, Isaac Likely, they have really been able to step up to the occasion for Mike Boynton's squad. And I say it all the time on this show, the culture at Oklahoma State must have been so good when the whole team, basically, besides URNAs, decided to come back when they thought at the time they were not going to be eligible for the NCAA tournament. I think the Cowboys deserve a lot of credit for the season they've had, beating Liberty 69-60. Good effort by head coach Richie McKay. We know he has won a tournament game in the past against Mississippi State, but Cade Cunningham was just a little bit too much. How about this one? Syracuse 78, San Diego State 62, and I could not have been more wrong about this game. And it's funny because I picked Syracuse originally and then I switched to San Diego State, and I fell victim to the fact that last year, if the NCAA tournament would have happened, San Diego State easily could have made the Final Four, in my opinion. Now, this year they lost Malachi Flynn, who's playing in the NBA right now. He's a phenomenal player, and the Aztecs had a really nice regular season, but at the same time, in the games they've lost, you were able to see very clearly the trouble that they were having. When they lost to Utah State twice on the road, you were able to tell that size was very overwhelming to them, and I didn't love their game plan against Syracuse, just shooting jump shot after jump shot after jump shot when it was clear that it wasn't going in. That team had no idea how to handle a zone, and oh yeah, it also must be pretty cool when Buddy Boeheim literally could not miss a shot. It was super impressive how well he was playing, and we're going to get into Syracuse's offense a little more in the game against West Virginia and how impressed I was with it at the time. But in this game against San Diego State, I'm not going to lie, it was an ass whooping, and I just expected a team coached by Brian Dutcher, a team that is older and experienced and was very hungry to play in an event like the NCAA tournament. It's crazy how that Syracuse zone, it never fails to disappoint. It's always able to get the job done. It's always able to frustrate your opponents, especially when they don't really have that much time to prepare for it. I was super impressed how right away you could tell that the Aztecs looked rattled, and right away, honestly, you were really able to tell that Syracuse eventually was going to be the winner of that game. They win it 78-62. How about West Virginia, 84-67 over Morehead State? I wanted to give a shout out to Morehead State. The fact that they just demolished Belmont in their conference championship game I watched was super impressive. I think they have a really good young coach that could be building something special there. I think they could be a team that in the Ohio Valley could compete with Coach Alexander and Belmont for many times to come. But a really nice win by Morehead State and a really nice win by West Virginia over the Eagles in round one of the tournament, 84-67. Bob Huggins' career win number 900. And I know Bob Huggins hasn't necessarily been the best NCAA tournament coach, but at the same time, he should be in the Hall of Fame, and I don't know how he's not with 900. Yes, I said that right. 900 career wins for Bob Huggins. He's had a very successful career, and I'm still just stunned how he's not in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. Nice win over Morehead State. Rutgers, the number 10 seed in this region, they get the 60-56 win over Clemson, and I was impressed with Rutgers in this game because this game was close throughout. Rutgers, I believe, had the lead early. Clemson came back, but Joseph Young, a kid that was really looking forward to at least try to get the opportunity to face his hometown Houston Cougars, who were actually the number 2 seed in this region. You also combine that with the fact that Rutgers, they were really looking forward to playing in their first NCAA tournament since the early 90s last year, and we all know what happened. The season ended up getting canceled, and I'm happy Rutgers, even though they played in a tough Big Ten, they were able to win this game. I think Rutgers and Maryland are 2 teams that were in the same boat. They were 10 seeds. I don't think a lot of people necessarily expected them to do anything, and each of them won a first-round game and moved on. So congratulations to Coach Peichel. I think he's really building something special there at Rutgers, and just give him more time because that program is on the rise. Houston ended up getting the 87-56 win over Cleveland State. The Cougars were the 2 seed in this region, and I just wanted to say I do think Cleveland State head coach Dennis Gates is going to be getting another job sooner rather than later. He's done a really nice job really building that Cleveland State program, and the fact that they were even in this game to begin with after all of the adversity that they faced this season was really impressive. Houston was able to run away with it, though, never really a doubt for the Cougs. They win it 87-56. Now let's get to the crazy stuff that happened in this region. And I think when you ask Zach, you just have said many times throughout the show, the Big Ten has been super, super disappointing throughout this tournament. And the fact that when you look at the Big Ten as a conference, they were supposed to go far. This was supposed to be the year that the Big Ten was going to break this big drought that has been going on since 2000. And when my guy, Chad Boyles, comes on with me later in today's episode, we actually are going to talk about that. We're going to try to figure out why exactly has the Big Ten been so disappointing in basketball and in the NCAA tournament over the last couple of years. And I think Illinois, they were just rattled against Loyola. And it was pretty evident to me early on that Loyola was just flat out the better basketball team. And I was just very surprised how easy Cam Krutwig was able to go after Kofi Cockburn and really was able to do whatever he wanted. Illinois has a player in Ayo Dosunmu who's a dude, and he's going to be a guy that is going to be a lottery pick, and he's going to be playing in the NBA, and this is the first game all season that he scored in single-digit points, and that really just shows you how impressive this defensive effort was by Loyola Chicago and Porter Moser. And I'll say this, man, if you're an Indiana fan, I think this has to be the guy you go after, because right now, it's not looking good for Indiana. When you look at Race Thompson, Armand Franklin, Al Durham, all of those guys entering the transfer portal, and here's the comparison I'll make. Remember when Avery Johnson, literally 2 seasons ago, got fired at Alabama, and all of their players who we knew at the time were pretty talented went into the portal, and Nate Oates came in and very impressively got them all to stay? I think Indiana and Porter Moser needs to do something similar to that, because right now the Hoosiers are not in a good spot at all. If they want to hire Mike Woodson, man, I get, hey, you would rather a guy with Hoosier connections be your coach, but man, Porter Moser has to be your guy. I throw the bank. And look, maybe he doesn't even leave. Maybe he wants to build that Midwest version of Gonzaga at Loyola Chicago. I'm not sure, but I think this team right now, they expect to get to at least the Elite Eight against Oregon State, and if they do win that game, Syracuse or Houston, that would be a very interesting matchup as well, but very disappointed in Illinois. The difference in players was not that big, and Loyola Chicago and Porter Moser was just really able to out-execute Brad Underwood. It was that simple. Moving on to the next round of 32 game. How about the Oregon State Beavers? They clinched their first Sweet 16 bid since 1982. They beat the Cowboys of Oklahoma State 80-70, and I wanted to talk about the Beavers because I'll admit, Oregon State has been a team that not only this year, but in many years past as well, they've just been like the most blah team. Like, they've never really been exciting. They've never really been dynamic to me. And this is really the best basketball since I've started to watch the sport that I've seen the Oregon State Beavers play. And I was so impressed how they were able to really take control and maintain control in this game against Oklahoma State. Because keep in mind, the Beavers had a decent regular season. I think you can make the argument that the fact that they finished as the number 5 seed in the Pac-12, like, that's nothing bad. Like, that's nothing to be ashamed of. But at the same time, when you look at the Beavers, no one expected them to beat Tennessee. No one expected them to beat Oklahoma State. And for me, what I was so impressed with was that Oklahoma State had the best player on the floor, obviously, Cade Cunningham. And not only was Oregon State able to frustrate him, Cade's final numbers in this game, he played all 40 minutes, 6 of 20 from the field, 4 of 11 from 3, 24 points. They were able to frustrate not only him, but really everyone else in this Oklahoma State rotation. Isaac Likely did not score in 22 minutes. Caleb Boone, who's been one of Oklahoma State's more consistent players in this run they've had in a very hot end to the season, he only had 4 points. Matthew Alexander Moncrief, he only had 3 points, and I was impressed with Oregon State's game plan and how they were really able to shut down Cade Cunningham. Congratulations to Coach Tinkle on getting the job done, and if you would have asked me who are the more unlikely teams in the Power 6 to get to the Sweet 16 before the season started, I actually do think Oregon State might have been on the top of my list, but I'll say this. Ethan Thompson and Jared Lucas are 2 studs, and that is a backcourt that can make shots, and I'm actually giving them a legit shot to beat Loyola Chicago. I really am. I think that's going to be a phenomenal game. Moving on to the next game in this Midwest region. How about Syracuse? 75-72 over West Virginia. And I think when you ask for my thoughts on this game, there are a couple things that come to mind right off the bat. A lot of people going into this game predicted West Virginia to win due to the fact that Bob Huggins actually coached against Jim Boeheim in the Big East with West Virginia, and he's familiar with the zone. And as great as that sounds, West Virginia came out to start this game and just looked very, very confused. It looked like kind of similar to San Diego State, a baffling game plan. It looked like they'd never seen a zone before, and Syracuse's offense was playing well. And once again, in the second half, West Virginia, the one thing I said about them since really, I would say 2 months ago, the last 2 months, Oscar Tshiebwe transfers from West Virginia in December. And I remember saying Bob Huggins deserves a lot of credit for the fact that literally midway through the season, he's changed the way his team is played and the style they play, going from a tough, grindy, big team to a perimeter-oriented guard team that could just make shots. The problem is they don't play any defense, and I think that cost him in this game against Syracuse. This is not your past Orangeman 11 seed of the past. This is a Syracuse team that, yeah, we know the zone and how effective and how dynamic it is, but at the same time, you know who else is dynamic? These shooters for Syracuse. Buddy Boeheim, probably the best player in this tournament right now, right? Like, I'm not saying if I had one pick, he would be the guy I'm taking, but he's had the 2 best games out of any player in March Madness so far. He's been phenomenal in the 2 games for Syracuse. And Joe Girard, finally, for the first time all season, he is playing with some confidence. I love Quincy Guerrier, a perfect modern-day 5. Marek Dolezaj, he has big game and tournament experience. And the kid Braswell, he's even contributing. I like the Syracuse team. And against West Virginia, I was also impressed how, in a similar way to Oregon State, they were able to take a punch when the kid McNeil, he was not missing anything, and still Syracuse was able to find a way to win behind Buddy Boeheim. Super impressive job by the Orange. The 3rd time in the last 5 NCAA tournaments they have made the Sweet 16 as a double-digit seed. Insanity. How about Houston, the last game that we will be going over? They beat Rutgers 63-60, and look, I picked Houston to come out of this region and make the Final Four, and I feel bad for Rutgers because this was easily a game they could have had, and who knows when the next time is going to be that Rutgers has a legitimate opportunity to make the Sweet 16, but at the same time, they have no one to blame but themselves. I think that their guards, they have played in big games. They are dynamic. They are the reason why Rutgers is even here to begin with, and unfortunately, they were not able to close the game out, but I'm impressed with Houston, man. The toughness of guys like DeJon Jarreau and the toughness of a guy like Quentin Grimes was really impressive, and Houston, they were in trouble. Their backs were against the wall, and somehow, some way, they were able to use their defense to their advantage and somehow, some way, find a way to win this game, and I was really impressed how they were able to do that. They'll move on to take on Syracuse, and I'm excited for that one because those two coaches, Boeheim and Kelvin Sampson, when Kelvin was the head coach of Oklahoma, faced off in the 2003 NCAA tournament. Boeheim sent Oklahoma packing. I'm curious, Kelvin Sampson playing or coaching in his former home at Indiana in that state. I'm curious to see how he'll do there. But look, when you look at this Houston Cougar team, I do think that they have the guard play that could get the job done in March. And Houston, Syracuse, out of all of the Sweet 16 games, could be the one, along with Michigan, Florida State, that I'm looking forward to the most. I think that game is going to be an absolute war, and I do give Syracuse a legitimate shot to win because, look, if Rutgers could almost beat Houston, I think there's a legit shot that Syracuse could beat Houston as well, and I do think the Orange are a dangerous opponent for anyone as a double-digit seed in March.